Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Explainer. I am honestly so thrilled to have you here today because we're looking at a truly foundational text. We're going to unpack Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o's groundbreaking 1986 manifesto, Decolonizing the Mind, the Politics of Language in African Literature. And look, this isn't just some dry book about grammar or vocabulary. It is a deep, powerful look at postcolonial theory and how the actual words we use fundamentally shape our reality.
Right off the bat, I want you to consider this incredibly stark quote from the text. While the bullet was the means of physical subjugation, language became the primary instrument for spiritual subjugation. Wow. It's a heavy statement, but it perfectly sets up the core premise of our entire explainer today. For Ngũgĩ, language is absolutely not just a neutral tool for passing along information. Language is a battlefield. It is the ultimate frontier of control.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The bullet and the mind. 2. Dropping the cultural bomb. 3. Schools of psychological violence. 4. A farewell to English. 5. Theater as communal resistance. And finally, 6. A revolutionary legacy today.
Section 1. The Bullet and the Mind, the 1884 Genesis. To really grasp Ngũgĩ's arguments, we have to go back to a very specific moment in history. We have to look at how the physical partitioning of the African continent required a simultaneous, deliberate carving up of the African mind. Let's briefly trace this timeline just to anchor ourselves. So everything starts with the 1884 Berlin Conference, where European powers basically drew arbitrary borders across this vast, diverse continent. But here's the thing. That political and economic division simply wasn't enough to maintain long-term stability for colonial rule. It had to be followed by cultural division. This directly leads us to the 1952 state of emergency in Kenya, which violently altered the school systems, eventually sparking the resistance we see in the 1976 Kimiruthu Theater Project and culminating in Ngũgĩ publishing his defining manifesto in 1986.
Ngũgĩ uses this brilliant, simple analogy to make his point. Colonial powers understood that taking over the land with guns, the bullet, well, that was insufficient. That only achieved physical subjugation. It just conquered the resources. To truly rule, they needed to capture the mental universe of the people. And the primary weapon for that spiritual subjugation, it was European language. The guns took the territory, sure, but the imposed languages were designed to capture the soul.
Section 2. Dropping the cultural bomb, annihilating heritage. So, let's explore exactly how that spiritual subjugation was enforced. What were the specific mechanisms, the actual weapons, used to control a population's mental universe?
Ngũgĩ coined a deeply evocative term for this. He calls it the cultural bomb. This is a metaphorical weapon, and it's designed to systematically annihilate a people's belief in their names, their heritage, and their environment. The entire goal here is to make the colonized view their own past as one giant wasteland of non-achievement. When this bomb goes off, the psychological fallout is what Ngũgĩ calls a collective death wish. Instead of valuing their own culture, the colonized are pushed to identify with the colonizers' values, basically viewing Western expressions as the absolute only universal benchmarks of excellence. Because of the dual nature of language, Ngũgĩ notes that it acts as a collective memory bank. Indigenous oral traditions serve as absolutely crucial repositories for communal memory. Think about it. Language isn't just how we order a coffee or give directions. It literally stores the specific images, history, and ancestral wisdom of the community that birthed it. To use a modern analogy, destroying a native language is like completely wiping a community's historical hard drive. You completely sever the organic transmission of indigenous knowledge from one generation to the next. And that leads us to this incredibly insidious concept, linguistic encirclement. This is such a cruel paradox. It basically means the colonized are forced to view their own world through the eyes of the colonizer. For African intellectuals who are leading nationalist struggles, they found themselves trying to map paths out of colonialism using the very languages, English, French, Portuguese, that disunified them in the first place. It's like trying to escape a maze using a map drawn by the person who trapped you. They were trapped in a mental framework completely preloaded with the colonizer's worldview.
Section 3. Schools of psychological violence, the colonial laboratory. Now, the colonial classroom was the primary laboratory where this linguistic alienation and psychological violence was engineered. Following the 1952 state of emergency in Kenya, the British administration made English the sole medium of instruction. Almost overnight, indigenous languages like Gikuyu were instantly associated with backwardness, and the enforcement was just brutal.
Ngũgĩ describes significant visceral psychological violence. Students caught speaking their mother tongue were subject to severe physical, corporal punishment to enforce this new linguistic hierarchy. They were publicly humiliated. Actually, they were forced to wear metal plates around their necks, labeling them as donkeys. Terrific. Meanwhile, English proficiency was exclusively rewarded with prizes and prestige. So you have this pyramid hierarchy designed to instill deep, lasting shame regarding their own heritage.
I want you to really think about this for a second. If your mother tongue, the language of your home, your parents, your dreams, is violently made a source of shame, how do you fight back? How on earth do you reclaim your identity when the very words you use have been weaponized against you?
Section 4. A Farewell to English, Reclaiming the Mother Tongue. For Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o, the answer to that question was a profound personal and political awakening. To understand his eventual decision, we have to look at the stark contrast Ngũgĩ drew between two groups. On one side, you have the elite academic. Because of those colonial schools we just talked about, they suffer a dissociation of sensibility. They are totally alienated from their roots, looking at their own people through a Eurocentric lens. But on the other side, you have the lived experience of the peasantry and the working classes. Ngũgĩ argues they are the true storehouse of culture. They're the ones actually guarding the oral traditions, the proverbs, and the revolutionary energy. Therefore, Ngũgĩ felt an absolute, non-negotiable political duty for African authors to stop writing for the Western-educated elite and start writing for the peasantry. So, Ngũgĩ formally announced his farewell to English. And listen, he viewed this not just as some stylistic preference, but as a strict political necessity and a revolutionary act. He completely rejected what he called intellectual theft, this idea that when African writers use European languages, they are essentially stealing the treasures of the mind from their own cultures just to enrich the literary traditions of Europe. By choosing to write exclusively in Gikuyu and Swahili, he adopted a revolutionary lens, arguing that reclaiming mother tongues is a fundamental act of resistance.
Section 5. Theater as Communal Resistance, the Khmer Project. Because reclaiming a mother tongue wasn't just about writing novels alone in a room, it was about galvanizing an entire rural community through the power of indigenous drama. In 1976, Ngũgĩ helped initiate the Khmer Project to basically demystify theater and actively challenge those colonial linguistic structures. Here's how they did it. First, they rejected the elitist closed-off stages of the city. Second, they collaborated directly with rural peasants and workers, opening up auditions and rehearsals to the whole village. Third, they co-authored a play, I Will Marry When I Want, entirely in Gikuyu, focusing on the real, everyday exploitation these workers faced. And fourth, they incorporated traditional mime, songs, and dances. It completely subverted the colonizers' linguistic hierarchy, returning cultural power directly to the masses, where it belonged. But the state feared this communal linguistic awakening. They feared it so much they actually imprisoned Ngũgĩ in a maximum security prison in 1977. Yet while locked away, he demonstrated just an unbelievable commitment to his own theories. He used his incarceration to write his first novel in Gikuyu, Devil on the Cross, drafting it painstakingly on rolls of prison toilet paper. I mean, talk about resilience. No way was he letting them silence him.
Section 6. A Revolutionary Legacy Today. The Quest for Relevance. So why are these theories, published decades ago, still so incredibly urgent today?
Ngũgĩ's work laid the absolute foundation for modern students who are actively carrying the torch of this legacy right now. From the early Nairobi literature debate that demanded African orature be centered in universities, to contemporary global movements like the #RhodsMustFall campaign and the Why Is My Curriculum White protests, modern students use these exact ideas in current activism. They're actively demanding the dismantling of the extended shadow of colonial education. They're fighting to move the center of knowledge away from an assumed Western universality right back to their own lived realities.
To summarize Ngũgĩ's profound vision, his work is ultimately a call for global linguistic equality. From his perspective, decolonizing the mind is a massive act of restorative justice. Reclaiming the mother tongue is a vital step toward genuine human liberation and building a truly diverse global consciousness. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. In what ways does the language you speak shape the boundaries of your own mental universe? Are there concepts, histories, or ways of seeing the world that are opened up or maybe closed off by the very words you use every single day? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me. Keep asking those big questions, keep examining your world, and I will see you in the next explainer.